Hey, it's Clay. Welcome to another video. This is going to be my tips and input on how to practice golf effectively. If you have ever felt like you're spending a lot of time at the range and it's just not translating to improving your scores or your game in general, if you've ever tried to make a swing change and you feel like you're having difficulty applying it to the golf course, hopefully some of this can help. I'm going to talk about some of the traditional practices that are going on, and I'm going to go into a little bit of the educational science stuff that I've been kind of reading into and finding applicable, and then I'm going to try to make some parallels on how we can apply some of that stuff from a traditional learning environment perspective to golf. So let's talk about traditional practice. I think most of you are probably familiar with this. You're going to go practice on your game, okay? So you go to the range, you get a bag of balls, you're going to, pull out some different clubs, and you're going to hit a lot of golf balls in quick succession with the same club for a while. You're kind of on a range that has a pretty optimal fairway type lie. There really isn't any kind of pressure. If you miss-hit something, it's not a big deal. You don't lose the ball, or you don't take a stroke penalty, or you're not in front of your peers that you're trying to impress. And a lot of the times I find that you kind of zone out after a while. You're kind of repeating this motion. You kind of really get into a little bit of a zone where your mind is kind of just repeating. It's a little bit on autopilot. Okay? So now let's talk about when you're actually playing golf and how that contrasts with the practice we just discussed. When you play golf, you are constantly using different clubs. You have time between each shot, sometimes a couple minutes, right? You got to walk or drive your cart to the next shot, and then you maybe got to wait for other people to hit. Every time you hit a new shot, your lie could be different. There could be wind that has changed, right? It was in your face on one hole, and it's behind your back in the next hole. The pin position can vary, and maybe certain holes have water or sand or trees, and the hazards are all presenting themselves in different and new ways. You have pressure, and the pressure is as simple as wanting to shoot a good score, or not wanting to lose a ball or to top it, or to experience embarrassment, or you want to do well in front of your peers, or maybe you are playing in a tournament environment and your shot actually matters for a competitive standpoint. With each shot, you go through this process of read, plan, and perform, where you step up to your drive and you look and you do some reading of the fairway and where the hazards are and how far you need to carry it. Okay, I'm going to select this club. All right, then you're going to plan, right? Okay, I'm going to make a certain type of swing, and I'm having certain swing feelings. Maybe take some practice swings. And then you step up and you actually hit that shot. And pretty much everything that I just discussed is contrasted with the practice that we just talked about on the slide previous. So obviously, we're seeing some contrast there and how we can make our practice better to playing golf. So now let's talk about some of the the educational science aspects. One of the things that they talk about is the idea of block practice. So block practice closely matches what the traditional golf practice thing I discussed earlier, where you are having a high number of repetitions on the same task. Right, you are going to hit a 7-iron 30 times in a row at the red flag with about 30 seconds in between each one. Now, I'm not here to say that block practice is entirely bad, because there certainly are benefits to it. That kind of high number of quick repetitions of the same movement can be very helpful at the beginning stages when you're learning a new movement pattern. It's pretty much the only way to actually ingrain those changes, and you can really start to feel the minutia of where each movement is and kind of psychoanalyze a little bit better. So it's not all bad, but I also want to talk about randomized practice. And what this means is that each repetition that you take is new. For example, let's say you're going to play basketball and you're going to practice your three-point shots. With a block practice, you would stand at the very top of the key and you would shoot, and someone would rebound and pass you the ball, and you would shoot, and you continue to shoot from that same spot. With a random practice, each repetition is new, meaning maybe you're going to do one at the top of the key, then you're going to run and you're going to do one maybe from the wing, and then you're going to do one from the corner, then you're going to do one from the top of the key again. And and you're continuously finding a new location to shoot that shot. So for golf, how can we do that? Well, maybe you're going to get a new target, right? You're not going to shoot at the red flag every time. Maybe you're going to change clubs, maybe every shot. Maybe you're going to introduce your pre-shot routine each time and do some visualization, right? So there are ways that you can do this. So let's talk about putting. Instead of hitting 10 6-foot putts from the same location in a row, maybe you drop 10 golf balls onto the green in kind of a random pattern, and you go and you do each one of those putts into the hole. That would be an example of random practice. So let's talk about what the studies and the research shows about which one is better. So with block practice, there tends to be marked improvement in the short-term, immediate sense. And what I mean by that is during the practice sessions, let's say you're going to hit balls for 30 minutes. You will notice that, from the first ball you hit to the 30th ball you hit to the 50th ball you hit, there's going to be improvement there, and you're going to be able to kind of have an immediate payoff. And a lot of that times that translates into being a confidence booster, right? A lot of times you leave the range with a feeling of satisfaction, like, all right, I really did a good job here, and I started one point, and I feel really good about where I ended up. However, studies will show that with random practice, you don't necessarily get that same immediate improvement. However, there tends to be much better long-term retention. And specifically with golf, that would mean much better transference to the golf course, the actual performance that matters. So let's talk about why this is the way it is. So with random practice, there's this idea of elaboration. And what that means is that when you practice randomly, the learner is forced to make connections between different movements. So what I mean by that is, let's say you're going to hit a driver on one swing, and then your next swing is going to be with a 7-iron. When you have that jumping from a different club and you're going to go to a different target, you're going to be able to make connections about, well, this was good about my driver swing, and now even though my 7-iron swing is a little bit different, I can make a connection between the two to get a feeling that will kind of transfer, or that will, I can take one thing from one and apply it to the next, even though they're different. And a lot of times this process is more self-guided, meaning that when you practice randomly, the student is more able to make some of these connections on their own, and they're less dependent upon external feedback or the use of a coach to tell them when they're doing something right or wrong. Another interesting part is the idea of forgetting, and how forgetting is actually very useful when it comes to learning. And the reason for that is when you learn something, it is important that you are able to recall it, because if you can't recall it, that really isn't learning. And if you think about that, right, so let's say you read a book and you read a sentence in that book and I learn it. Well, if you aren't able to come back the next day and recall that information, I'm not necessarily saying remember it word for word, but the ability to remember the gist of the idea, then you really have not learned it. So just as important as reading the book is your ability to recall that information at a later time. And with block practice, what happens is that because each of your repetitions are so close together, you learn the new skill on the first repetition, and then you simply kind of piggyback it on each subsequent rep, and you draw upon it, you reuse it, you recycle it. However, when you practice randomly, each repetition requires a new learning movement. And so you are actually practicing the skill of recalling each time, and you're not able to just simply pull, maybe you can pull the connections I talked about previously, but you're not able, you have to apply those in a new way. And that new twist really stresses the recall side of learning and not so much that upfront new learning. And then lastly, I think it's very obvious that the random practice is much more closely resembling the performance mode. When you actually play golf, you are hitting a new club each time, and you're hitting, the variables change from each shot to each shot. And I think the random practice is much more closely resembling that. So let's talk about application. I think one of the mistakes would be to take away that block practice is bad, and that's not true. I think that block practice is good for certain things, especially if you're trying to learn a new movement pattern, right? Let's say you have a slice and you want to learn how to hit a draw. When you are first starting that, you should not be practicing randomly. You should be using block practice to help ingrain and get a feeling for that new movement, because it is very jarring. And one of the things I notice is a lot of the times when you're learning something new, you need to over-exaggerate beyond and past what you think is right. So block practice does have its place. However, I think that most people use block practice all the time, and random practice should take over once your initial new movement has kind of settled into place. And once you can repeat it in the block situation, you should be trying to move into a random practice situation pretty quickly thereafter that. And I'd even argue that as you're a better player, if you're not looking to learn new movements, if you're just trying to hone your game or to increase what you already know, you should be using random practice primarily as your main practice form. So what does that mean? I go back to the idea of interleaving, where each repetition is different, right? So you're going to pull all 14 clubs out of your bag, and you're never going to hit 2 in a row with the same club. Or you're going to, if you want to pick the same club, you're going to pick a new target each time. Or even like a better idea would be to really push this to the maximum. If you're, let's say I'm going to set up and I'm going to hit a driver with a little baby fade. And the next shot is going to be a 9-iron with a little bit of a low draw. And then the next shot after that is going to be like a 30-yard pitch. And then the next shot after that is going to be a 5-iron with a high straight ball. Or, you're really trying to push yourself. That would be kind of more at an advanced level. And one way you can do this would be to visualize playing golf on the range. This is something that I know Tiger Woods is famous for doing in his warm-ups, is he will actually play the first few holes on the driving range. So you hit, let's say you've got your first hole is a par 5, and you're going to hit your driver. And then you actually watch, where did that ball go? How did I do, right? Maybe I hit a really good one. All right, so next time I'm going to hit a 3-wood from the fairway. I'm going to try to make it to the green. Or maybe I hit a bad drive, and so then I'm actually going to go plop a ball down in the rough, and I'm going to hit a hybrid and lay up. Or, and then you continue, okay, maybe I laid up to about 120 yards. Okay, so now I'm going to find a target at 120 yards, and I'm going to try to hit my 120-yard club to that pin. And then let's say you hit a poor shot there, and then you got to hit a pitch or a chip shot on the green. And so you're actually visualizing playing golf on the range. And then the last way I'll mention is to even take it a step further and to try to practice on the course. And this was something that I came up with discussing how players used to play back maybe in the 60s and 70s, when driving ranges were not kind of what they are today. They didn't have the number of balls and the efficiency. So a lot of the times players would practice on the course, meaning you're going to go out and play a round of golf with the intention that you're not really even keeping score, but you're trying to practice so let's say, in my case, I'm trying to make a swing change. So that means I'm going to go out and I'm going to play some holes of golf with the focus being that I'm trying to perform my new swing on the golf course. And maybe you are walking up and you're going to hit, maybe you're going to drop down 2 or 3 balls at the 150-yard marker and hit some shots. And then you're going to go drop some balls down at 70 yards and hit some kind of, 3/4 swing wedges. And then the next hole, you're going to hit a driver off the tee and a 3-wood off the tee. And you're really trying to use the golf course as your practice facility, right? And you're not doing it in such a way where you're holding up play, or you're, really kind of, taking huge mounds of divots out of the fairway or anything that would be kind of unethical. But you're using some of this opportunity to bridge the gap between practice and play. So in conclusion, I hope that some of this helps kind of clarify and explain what the methods of learning are from an educational science perspective. How these people have studied the brain and they've studied human beings and how they learn. And it really was kind of stark to me how in the golfing world, we don't do a very good job of practicing effectively. And so I hope you can take this and apply it to your game, and it can really help you improve. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you subscribe for more content like this, and I'll see you again soon. Thanks. Bye.